area, the other country in the world which is really going through a massive rupture is the country of Iran, because in the last few weeks we have seen the most debilitating anti-government protests that we've seen in a number of years, and the response by the Ayatollah regime has been equally crushing. Thousands of people, in fact, official estimates alone put the death toll at over 5,000. Unofficial estimates say it could be well over 10,000 people who've been killed in a brutal reprisal by the state machinery. It's not just the police that the Iranian authorities have used. Even the IRGC has opened fire in an indiscriminate fashion on thousands of protesters. Now the question is, what happens next? America is moving definitive weaponry into the region, whether it is a USS carrier strike group, whether it is other transport and military aircraft that's being moved into the region as well. The question that's on top of everyone's mind: will Trump take any kind of kinetic action to topple the Iranian regime, or at the very least to remove Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who's the 86-year-old supreme leader of Iran? I decode what happens next in this game of chess in Iran. In the past 2 weeks, the Islamic Republic of Iran perpetrated the greatest massacre in modern Iranian history. In response to massive popular protests against the rule, the regime has killed thousands of unarmed protesters. Just how many remains unclear. Official estimates themselves have put the number at over 5,000. But unofficial estimates put it in the range of over 10 to 15,000. Some analysts have been quick to claim that the latest series of events will be the end of the Ayatollah regime. But while the regime has been greatly weakened by this round of protests, it has nevertheless proved resilient and ruthless. The Iranian opposition is divided, and foreign intervention is not a solution. So what happens next in Iran? The one thing that these protests have shown is that the regime can still be overthrown if cracks within the ruling elite widen dramatically. The key here is whether there are enough security forces who start to defect in great numbers. So far, there have been no large-scale defections. The United States can also play an important role in disrupting the regime's ability to shut off the internet and conduct crimes against humanity using the cover of darkness. The current uprising against the regime began with protests in Tehran's main market, which was triggered by a major currency crisis. Soon, students, laborers, and many ordinary Iranians who were fed up with the misery of everyday life joined the strikes. The protests then spread to smaller western and southwestern towns, and these included Lordian, Malikshahi, and Abdanan, where a majority of residents reportedly came out to protest. The regime let the protests play out for a few days before it responded with unmitigated force. Initially, it was using regular security forces, mostly the police, but by early January, the regime's rhetoric and its force posture hardened. The Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said that the rioters should be put in their place. What followed was brutal and unprecedented. Having egged on the protesters, Trump now says it's time for the Iranian leadership to be removed. America is moving the carrier strike group, the USS Abraham Lincoln, to the Middle East. The carrier group includes Burke-class destroyers. This in a bid to put pressure on the Ayatollah regime.
We don't want to see people killed, and we want to see a little bit of freedom for these people. These people have been living in hell for a long time. That used to be a hell of a country. I have friends that used to invest in Iran, and they did well with their investments. It was a great place. The people were great. Even the leadership was good. And now it's living in hell.
On the 8th of January, the Iranian authorities imposed a total internet and telecom shutdown, and the killing escalated under the cover of this blackout. The IRGC shot thousands of unarmed protesters, not just in bigger cities like Tehran, Isfahan, and Mashhad, but also in countless small towns and villages. There have even been reports of the regime using Russian-made heavy machine guns against peaceful demonstrators. Witnesses have described the level of violence as shocking, with parts of the country resembling war zones. The regime has framed the uprising as a Mossad and CIA plot and branded the protesters as terrorists, which is a dangerous escalation. Families were not even allowed to retrieve the bodies of their loved ones from mortuaries or even hold funerals for them. The message from the regime to the people was clear. Dissent will not only get you killed, it can deny your family dignity, closure, and even the right to mourn. And now the regime is digging its heels in after having tasted blood. The Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has said that any forced removal of the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei would be construed as an act of war on the Iranian nation and on the Iranian people.
اگر کسی که مال این کشوره اعتراض بکنه و ما اعتراضشو میشنویم و گوش میدیم و حلش میکنیم. آمریکا و اسرائیل اونجا نشستن دارن به اینا درس میدن برید ما هم هستیم. همونایی که این کشور رو زدن و جوانا و کودکان ما رو کشتن الان به اینا دارن دستور میدن شما این کارو بکنید ما هستیم شما برید خراب کنید ما هم میایم پشت سرتون.
All right, so what is likely to happen in Iran next? Will there be a collapse of the regime or will there be some kind of leadership change? Will America attack Iran militarily? Alex Vataka is the founding director of the Iran program at the Middle East Institute. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Vataka. What is likely to happen, you reckon, in Iran? America is moving more military muscle into the region. Will there be some kind of an attempt to try and take out the leadership in Iran? What's likely the next step?
First, great to be with you. Look, I mean, before I answer the question about U.S. Possible next steps, let's just not forget what has happened in Iran is historic in many ways. To kill thousands of citizens at the hands of the Islamic Republic in the course of a few days is something we've never really seen in Iranian history before, certainly not in modern times. And if you want to go back to 1979, when the Shah's regime fell, they didn't kill people in anything like this. We're talking thousands of people. The numbers are not yet clear, but it's the many thousands of people. In that sense, the Islamic Republic is on a different trajectory today than it was before these protests. The question is what the United States will make out of it. I think here in Washington, D.C., there are two schools of thought. One that says this regime is now on the brink. The United States should do what it can to essentially nudge this regime over the cliff. And I think you hear that loud and clear from many folks close to the president. Others are not so sure. Others think we've seen this before. A regime that's unpopular doesn't necessarily mean the United States should invest in another endless war. So this is where the policy debate is in Washington. But of course, so much will depend on what happens in Iran. And nobody knows what will happen in Iran. But as I said before, you cannot kill thousands of your own people and go back to your old ways before. I suspect the Iranian people will treat this regime very differently going forward. That might create opportunities for Washington in terms of what it should do in its Iran policy.
So, explain this to me. You're saying what we have seen in Iran over the last 2 or 3 weeks is almost unprecedented. Thousands of people have not been killed in this form or fashion, whether it was in 2009 or even in 2022, the last time there were these protests. And yet, the feeling seems to be that the almost ironclad grip that the Ayatollah regime has on the country and the political system there has still not been broken, despite the thousands who've been killed.
Right. I mean, that is for sure the case. We haven't seen any major signs of defections, but you have to assume that ironclad grip isn't as ironclad, that just underneath the surface, a good part of the machinery inside the Islamic Republic are guessing that this regime is now a sinking ship, that its demise is not a question of if, but when. It could be weeks, months, maybe a couple of years, but it's led by an 86-year-old man, Ali Khamenei at the top, who has no solutions to the problems of Iran, who has no solutions to the grievances of the average Iranians. And his only solution has been to kill them each time they come to the streets. And in the last few years, we've seen they are coming out in the streets more often. Their demands for change are more radical than before. And the only thing they get from Khamenei and the Revolutionary Guards is bloodier crackdowns, which is in itself a solution to anything. So at some point, I think we should expect to see regime insiders getting tired, realizing that time is not on their side, and that might result in defections. We're not there yet, but if we do get there, that's when the moment you see the regime really maybe starting to begin signs of essentially imploding.
Is it possible, though, for Trump and the United States to do what they did in Venezuela in Iran? Essentially, they haven't changed the regime there. They've not changed the system. They've basically removed the number one and replaced him with the number two. Can they do that in Iran? And if that is, like you said, Mr. Khamenei is 86 years old. He's not getting any young. If that happens, who will likely succeed?
We've never had any scenario like that to compare this with. So this idea of an internal coup inside the Islamic Republic where Khamenei is sort of sidelined or removed, which I doubt, because I don't think, the United States probably will not send special forces into Tehran to take Khamenei out. And I don't think Khamenei voluntarily is going to move to, say, Moscow like Assad did. So basically, one scenario is that there's inside the Iranian regime, that there is a consensus that the old man no longer really serves the interest of the regime, never mind the Iranian country, the nation state of Iran, that he no longer serves an interest, that they decide to one way or another marginalize him. There are some signs that some Iranian officials are already sending signals to Washington about the regime's willingness to make compromises, looking for off-ramp. We don't know if just if those are sincere or designed to buy time. But the comparison to Venezuela isn't necessarily the best. It shows one thing, though. President Trump, which I think is true, is looking for a quick win. And it's not necessarily the best way of looking at Iran, because Iran requires holding the hand of the country, helping the people build a different system going forward, put the Iranians in the driver's seat. It requires kind of a commitment to a big project. And this American president, Donald Trump, is not a nation builder. So he has to be convinced.
One final word, because we have you. This whole business about the Board of Peace in Gaza, which Trump has announced, and he's going to be the chair of it. He's invited a whole host of world leaders, including the Prime Minister of India. Do you see this working? I mean, how will this work? Because ultimately, if the fighting is going to continue, and it is up until now, how will this Board of Peace work? And should a country like India take the bait and say, yes, okay, we will be part of this board?
Look, I would just say, if I was India, I would show up. I would play to the sort of, if you will, the ego of President Donald Trump, because you have your own bilateral relationship with the United States. Whether the board is going to actually make a meaningful difference in terms of the future of Gaza, as you said, that's a whole different question that basically depends on what happens on the ground. But I think most countries these days are treating what President Trump wants to do in terms of publicity moments like this is to sort of endear themselves to him, to make him feel good about himself, but should be cautious in terms of whether efforts like this genuinely will lead to sustained peace in a place like Gaza or not. That remains to be seen.
All right, Alex Vatica from the Middle East Institute in Washington, D.C., thank you very much for joining us here on CNN News.